a sight for my soul.
Welcome to the Inspired Evolution, and it is such a treat to be here today. We have with us Shanna Lee. Shanna, how are you?
I'm wonderful. After that intro, I'm feeling real good.
Zing! Morning. Did you have your coffee? Here we go. For those tuning in for Shanna for the first time, she's an intuitive coach. She's a writer. She's a speaker. She's got her own The Soul Frequency podcast. It is such a treat to have you here today.
Oh, I am so happy to be with you. This is going to be a fun conversation.
So let's dive straight into it. Like, we can beat around the bush, but why should we? So the soul frequency, what does that mean to you?
The soul frequency is your own energetic fingerprint. Just like we have a unique fingerprint, we have a unique energy. And for a long time, I didn't understand my own. And I had a massive experience where I really tapped into understanding this unique fingerprint that we have. And then I got super curious on how to understand it and all the facets of it. And then, of course, once I dove into my world, I was like, I got to tell people about this. So I've been teaching other people how to understand their energy, how to be embodied and aligned with that energy so they can really bring forward their gifts. Right.
I love that. What comes up for me in and around that is how does understanding, because I use a language not too dissimilar to yours, which I kind of see like an energetic signature in things. But I don't really use it to diagnose or understand. I just kind of see like, when I see Jungian archetypes almost, I kind of see like, oh, that person has the same energetic signature as that person. Like, you know, that person is definitely like of Russian descent, or that person's definitely Indian. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can kind of see that. I look at it and go, oh, there's like an energetic signature there. But I think what you're referring to is a bit more dialed in than that, right? This energetic fingerprint that you're talking about. How does that actually, like, when you talk about embodying it, and you know, what is actually going on there? Like, we've each got our own expression. Is that what I'm hearing? And how do we actually go about tapping into that to then embody it? So how do we actually identify our energetic fingerprint?
Yeah. So most times, because we are born into a certain reality, and that reality is largely based on our caregivers, like our parents, right? Or whoever cared for us. And that's not actually reflective of our soul self, right? Our soul reality. And so for many different reasons, we get pulled in different directions, right? And ultimately, one of the major reasons is we want love, acceptance, and to be cared for. Right. And so we learn very young to just make our caregivers happy, right? Or the people that are going to care for us or love us or accept us. And for some people, they didn't want to do that with their parents, but maybe they do that with friends or teachers or bosses, even when they're older. And so we develop a lot of things that are out of alignment with our own energy. And the way that people know if they're out of alignment with their own energy, I'll give some symptoms of that. Where you are, it can be anything from any addictive behavior. So food, alcohol, you know, sex, drugs, like even addictions such as like over exercising, right? They are somewhat healthy, monitoring what you eat a lot. Like, these are ways that we kind of self-insulate ourselves, and we actually tie up our energy, right? By focusing on these other things almost obsessively, so that we don't have to feel the disharmony or the dissonance in our life, right? These are symptoms of like misalignment or disharmony within ourselves. We also do things like distract ourselves. Sometimes overworking can be a great way to not realize we're out of alignment. And while we're doing this, we are not experiencing our life fully on an emotional level. So our ego generally doesn't want to see the disharmony or where the energy is out of alignment. Right. And so it ties us up in all of these behaviors, but it disconnects us from our emotional self. So over time, we're storing emotions. We're in disharmony. We've got all these exterior behaviors going on. And what it looks like from my vantage point as a healer, the way I'm shown it is almost like the inside of a computer. And it's like the programming is off, right? So it's showing me where the programming is off from the intention of the soul self or your blueprint about why you came here, right? Like we really want to fulfill this idea of we planned on doing some certain things and learning some certain lessons when we came. How do we move into alignment with that? So there's a lot of different things that are pulled in, and a lot of different details to really understand this. But what happens with people as we start to, this is a lens you can look through, right? As we start to look through this lens, we start to feel what I call it drafting. Like, you know, when you can ride behind somebody and just kind of draft.
Oh yeah, slipstream.
Right. And so it's kind of like that energetically, where the energy just starts to create opportunities for you. It starts to pull you forward. It starts to, I call it the land of little miracles, where things just start to step into your life. And that's how we know we're starting to move into greater harmony with nature, with ourselves, with who we came to be.
Oh my God, I love that. Just as a visual, just like picturing myself like being in the slipstream of my spirit is just like, it's such a great visual.
It's like, take me, energy.
And I'm just kind of cruising like in the wake of the boat that is the spirit. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And as you said, there was quite a few details that, you know, that is in there. And one of the things that I would like to hone in on, just because it's coming up for me, is the dialogue between alignment and balance. I think it's one that it just seems really pressing at the moment for me personally. You know, when we're like, there's this idea around, let's just align to what we do, and go all the way in. And I'm reflecting on that. And from my perspective at the moment, just being in such deep alignment, I find a lot of flow comes out of that space when you're aligned, which is what I'm assuming you're saying is like aligning to your energetic fingerprint as well. You can find that flow. You'll feel like you're in slipstream to your to Great Spirit as well. So in there, one of the things that comes up for me though is I used to think that once I was aligned, it was just a matter of going all the way in. I'm now sitting recently with this idea of balance. I'm not sure where it fits. Like I still prescribe to my ideology that once you're aligned, you are in balance because you're aligned. You like, you know, the balance brought you into alignment. But I'm realizing that even, you know, there's a deeper conversation to be had around balance for me in terms of, you know, looking after myself and making sure that, you know, like I can actually serve that message, that embodiment of that essence. Can you tell us a little bit about what your awareness of, I guess, the alignment and balance kind of conversation is?
So I see those as two different things. So alignment means you're going to have a lot of universal forces at your back, right? So you're going to be able to manifest things quicker. You're going to open doors. You're going to feel almost as if I'm not doing anything really, and doors are opening or opportunities are coming, right? And that feels expansive. It also can be overwhelming and take over our life. Right. So just like when somebody gets, let's say, psychic messages, right? When someone is newly getting psychic messages, they might come to me because I coach people and they might say, there's so much, like, it's like taking over my life. And I'm like, well, you can ask for it to stop so you can rest, right? And this is where balance to me comes in. Like, you may have all this energy at your back and you may have turned the faucet on. It doesn't mean you have to have the faucet on full blast all the time because you become soaking wet, right? So that's where you, right, get to choose when I turn the faucet all the way on and when I know I'm discerning that I need rest, right? That I need to be quiet. I need to go within, because when we go out in the world, it's an expansion, right? And like we know in nature, everything that expands then contracts, just like waves crash on the shore and then they pull back, right? So it's completely unnatural for us as human beings to be in a constant expansion state. And you know, it's interesting because a lot of people who are high achievers are trying to exist in an all the time expansion state. These are a lot of my clients. And I'm always like talking to them about finding the contraction, right? Because the contraction to most people feels scary and awful. Like if I go and I contract, am I giving up my success or my expansion? You know, will it ever come back? That type of thing, right? If I don't say yes now, it'll never come across my plate. But the contraction is a necessary part. It's almost more active than the expansion, right? It's just
Mm,
inner activity. But what it does is it allows greater expansion, right? Than even
mm,
before. So we have to get used to this idea that we are part of nature. And if you watch nature, there is, just like there are seasons, right? There's a contraction season and then an expansion where everything blooms. And just like it is with the waves, it is with us. And burnout is what happens when we try to exist in constant expansion.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, it brings home a metaphor for me because I spent a lot of my winters here in Melbourne. Winter in Melbourne can be quite intense. Like running away, not really running away, but yeah, running away to travel and give talks. And, you know, also like Europe in summer is amazing. So we had the blessings of basically cashing in on 2 summers, you know, the Australian summer and then the European summer, but never really slogging it out for a full Melbourne winter. And I remember one time I actually made it, like I didn't go traveling through Europe. And actually that's happening again, literally as we speak, because of the COVID restrictions. We're
Right.
going through a full cycle. And that winter was actually the winter. It was really intense. It was really hard. And it was for that reason, like I could almost be a sun worshiper, if you will. I love expansion. I love the sun. I love the light. But also like understanding that there are cycles, right? There's this opportunity for us to, like exactly how you're sharing with seasons. And I sort of had the drop in at the back of that winter was this, you know, awareness of the cycles that, you know, the sun kind of has this glow, which is in summer, it's just this big round orb. And then in spring, or in autumn, actually the little triangle bits pop out and it has that little spiky sun that we're used to seeing. And then winter, that orb actually shrinks, you know, back to like just the core of the center of the sun. And then in spring, the triangles start to emerge out of it again. And in summer, it's this expanded thing. And we're consistently going through this breathing in alignment with nature. Now, the key thing, and I think what I wanted to just bring home to was that first winter was actually what gave birth to my podcast. And
Mm.
giving birth to the podcast is what gave birth to the speaking, the coaching, all the consulting and the training. So it's really interesting to hear you intuitively sort of share that, you know, from a really deep place, which is, you know, we think that um, when we stop expanding, there's this fear. It legitimately is there, which is why we run into burnout so frequently. It's such a common conversation in most of these spaces, especially with high achievers. It's like, I've got to continuously expand. And when you look at it, the economy is geared that way, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of, and you could almost argue, and perhaps I'm extrapolating further than I should, but with the, you know, with the current COVID situation, we've been consistently expanding. And people are like, now we can clearly see that they're trying to, in like they're having the conversations, do we have our health, do we look after everybody's health, or do we bring back the economy? So that continual
Yeah.
expansion, it's like, actually we've got to bring it back for everybody's health, and we've got to actually accept that we're going to go into a recession. And I can kind of feel that energy coming on now very much so as well. It's just there's this collective kind of contraction that's coming for all of us at this time, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I think we have to be careful of what we give value to over something else, right? We live
Mm,
in polarity. And
mm,
so we say, this is better than that.
mm.
And then we try to spend our life in what we think is better than the other,
Yeah.
right? Which is exactly to your point about balance, right? That makes balance impossible. And so I think if we had a more well rounded vantage point, that it's all worthwhile, even the hard things we go through in life, right? That we
Mm,
learn important lessons in those difficulties. And sometimes things are birthed from those, and sometimes it changes the trajectory of our life. And if we can stay in that kind of balanced state of like,
mm.
all is good, right? All is what we came for, then we can really move forward in our life powerfully and not get stuck with all the, you know, the little stuff that comes up.
I love that. Thank you so much for diving deep on the alignment and balance piece. And I want to ask you a question, and it might be a bit personal. So, pardon me if it is too personal. But I often find with Inspired Evolution that, you know, oftentimes our biggest challenges form our biggest gifts. And I see the amazing work that you're doing, supporting people into coming into alignment with their energetic fingerprint. You know, what was some of your challenges in this space coming to, was this always something that was present for you, or were there some challenges in terms of, like you said, were you distracted or obsessing about things or addicted to things at a certain point that was kind of keeping
All
you
of
away
it.
from? Yeah.
Yes, all of it. Um, I think one of my life lessons is about strength and about, understanding humanity, understanding what it is to be human. For much of my life, in a funny way, I haven't felt super connected to feeling human, right? Like there's always been a piece of me that's like observing life as if I'm not a part of it, right? Like, oh, that's interesting that people do this, and it's interesting that people do this. And so I've had a natural knack for that my entire life. And I've also been a person that everybody came to solve their problems, right?
Ah,
Even as a small child, even adults, and who people would share and divulge these very deep things with me. I mean, there's something about my energy that
mm,
causes people to do this. And for much of my life, I almost ran from that. I was like, I don't know what to do with that. That just seems, it doesn't seem like anything I would ever do as a career. And I was very intent on being successful. Like, I guess you could call it winning the human game. And
mm,
for me, that felt like financial success. It felt like, respect, getting to a certain level in your career where you garner respect. And the interesting thing that happened on that journey is that as I started to check the boxes off my list and reach the places that I thought were going to be the pinnacle, like that moment of, wow, right? Like
mm.
everything's amazing. I'm fully fulfilled. I didn't feel that way at all. And I actually started to feel worse the more successful I became, which was a really challenging thing for me because I really felt
Mm,
like there were so many ways I sold out parts of myself for this idea that when I get here, like I will feel good in my life. And it started to just get worse and worse. And that caused me, and I had all of the symptoms like, struggles with food over my lifetime, like, overworking. Like I just did all kinds of things to not really look at the things I needed to see within myself to
mm,
get real with who I am until one day I had pretty much checked all the boxes on my list. And I really felt like the jig is up. Like I had this moment where I was like, this is all a lie. Like I've basically been sold a lie at what causes people to feel good and be happy and be fulfilled. And I started to, I worked around a lot of very financially successful people at the time. I started to look at these people and they were miserable.
mm,
And it just started giving me this idea that I either was going to continue on this path and just kind of die in some ways every year, or I was going to need to change everything, which is a sobering experience to kind of
mm.
come to that point.
Yep.
And I started to dismantle this very big life that I created. And people were shocked and they were disappointed and they didn't understand. And, there was just a lot of upheaval with that. But I knew no matter what, that I couldn't live that way forever. And so whatever it was going to be, it was going to be. And I just had to follow the path. And that was really what led to a spiritual awakening and me being able to see energy like I do. I don't think that that would have ever awakened had I not allowed myself the space to have it come up, right?
Mm.
If I had not been willing to step away from that life I had created, it left room, right, for me to see myself in a grander way.
And what do you think it was that gave you the space to step away? Do you think it was just finally having checked everything off that there was nowhere else to kind of go and you just had to get better and look further?
Yeah, I just really felt like I'm going to keep making more money and amassing more things. And I'm now very clear that that doesn't solve your problems nor make you happy. And so if I stay on that train, I know where it's going, right? I know how I'm going to feel in my life. Like I just got very clear. Like I think some people
Mm.
keep feeling like, oh, if I get this or oh, if I do this, like then I will feel this way. And it just came to the point where the jig was up and I just realized this was never continuing down this road was never going to give me the sensations and feelings that I wanted to feel inside myself.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I relate. There's been some real stark moments recently where I've been where I've been realizing this in just my day to day, which is I'll be working on a piece of work, and let's just say for the podcast or something creative, working on some like editing and back into that sort of stuff, just having a look at reviewing stuff. and it'll be nighttime and I'm still working away, and I'm sort of thinking about it, and I'm going, hang on a sec, what am I doing right now? And it's like, oh, you're working on the inspired evolution. And it's like, yep. And the inspired evolution is all about living life on your own terms. Yep. And it's like, I get to be creative. Yep. That's definitely there. And it's like, what is the end mission of this? And the end mission of this is to, spend some really good quality time with myself, my partner, my pet, my music, and just kind of enjoy life. But having a vehicle that supports me in doing that. And then I would stop and catch myself, and I'm looking at my partner having dinner by herself while I'm working away, and I'm catching myself going, wait, exactly what you said, right? It was like I'm putting off like the thing that is right there and available to me right now in the moment for this future time when it's going to come to me in greater spades, apparently, in my mind. And it's just like, actually, no, it's right there. Can you just take a moment to just disconnect? And it's interesting watching those moments, because I think what I want to hone in on is, I can feel it in those moments where it's like, oh, like my heart or my intuition, or what you might call your energetics, is kind of calling you to, like, there's life right in front of your eyes. It's like right there waiting for you to step into it, as opposed to the mind kind of being like, okay, cool, I've just got to punch out a couple of more things, just a few more edits and we'll get there, And it's this interesting dichotomy. And I think you touched on it very well when you sort of, you do, for me anyway, well, good is just right, is but when you said be who you are, there's that being who you are versus success. And it's just like, defining success can be a real challenge, especially in today's society. I think that comes back to what you're saying, like, nature versus nurture. Our definition of success is wildly guided by nurture rather than our inner nature, which is to just simply be who we are, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's so much influx of information that we get, right? And there's so much reward that we get for certain aspects of success. I mean, it's really challenging for people to do what's right for them if it doesn't feel like there's immediate reward in that, right? If society isn't going to congratulate you for changing your life, then why should I change my life, right? Like people, it's this dissonance between what's going on inside of us versus what it looks like on the outside. Like it's, a lot of my clients have voiced to me over the years, like, I get awards for being like this. Like people pay me money to be like this, right? I've built this image in this life. It doesn't feel good inside, but like, what do I do about that, right? I already built this whole big thing. And that's that point where you have choice about what your future is. You can make a new choice, which I think is our human superpower. The ability to make new choices and create a new reality for ourselves is incredible. And we are so supported in that at this time on planet Earth. And I just hope that people see that possibility, because I believe that Mother Earth is going to teach us some lessons over the next few years and help us evolve and see ourselves more clearly. And some of those lessons, some of our best lessons, are challenging ones, right? Ones that call us up to something else. And I think the more we have some movement around that, right, and we have some openness about allowing change to happen, the easier it is to move through it.
I hear you. And wow, does this dovetail into the crux of what I was, one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about today. So we're talking about, and I think that's so profound, just we are so rewarded for like the false apparitions of who we can be at times. The society is like, yeah, like you said, I'm celebrated for being, a hard worker, or I'm celebrated for, some of these toxic patterns that are, not necessarily serving me, or being stern with others and not loving and kind, and these are just some low hanging fruits. There's so many in there. And what's precipitating for me in my mind is that we are rewarded at times for being false by, and one of the favorite things of yours that I hear you say is the truth heals. Can you help us unpack that a little bit further at this juncture?
Yeah, so there's sayings we all know, like the truth will set you free and things of that nature. But what I've found energetically is that truth is ultimate harmony, right? It's your energetic. When I was talking about disharmony, truth is
Mm,
energetic harmony, and truth is, there are universal truths, and then
mm,
there are personal truths, right? So, and your personal truths might change. Like you might feel differently on your personal truths now than you did 5 years ago because you've
mhm,
discovered more things and you've opened up in different ways. But when truth happens, when we learn a new truth, right, it impacts us, right? Like let's say let's just use the example of in relationship. Let's say you think you and your partner are fine,
mm,
right? And one day you come home and your partner says, I'm leaving you. Like that is a truth that changes the whole trajectory of your life in a second, right? It sends things into motion. And there are positive truths that that feel good and that we're moving forward. And then there are tough truths that we understand, but understanding the energetic power that goes on in that moment, right? You were heading down a certain possibility cloud, right? Call it a
mm,
road, a possibility road. We have all these different possibilities that we can link up with, right?
mm.
Like you could have gone to a different place, not met your partner and met somebody else, right? And
Yeah.
you'd be down a different road, right?
Mm,
So we have these different roads. And when a big truth like comes, it creates a fork in the road, right? Or it creates basically a turn off the road that you're on altogether,
mm,
either by your choice or by something that happens in life. And so it is one of the most powerful energetic catalysts, and we don't really think about it like that. Like we don't really understand that. And so what happens through the process of like when I'm opening people up to truths, I'm basically seeing the deeper truths, the things that they're not seeing at this time,
mm,
and I'm just helping them bring that to the surface, bring it up to conscious awareness, and then allowing, like, I don't need to do anything else other than bring it to conscious awareness. And then that truth really takes on an energetic life of its own, right? It sometimes needs to be processed emotionally, sometimes needs to be processed mentally, sometimes there are choices around this truth, but it is going to change the trajectory that somebody's on. And so when you think about the little truths and then the really big truths, and we start looking at this and seeing what really lies in our soul self as truth. And sometimes people feel it in their body, right? Sometimes we feel like you feel when someone's lying to you, right? Like it's like, oh, it feels awful in my body. So when we feel truth, it feels like, oh, even if it's sad, it's like, okay, I now know the truth, right? I now can make choices based on an accurate vantage point. And
mm,
so it really causes people to move into a healing process. Now, some people's healing process is largely emotional to begin with. Some people it's very mental, some people it's a spiritual process. It usually touches every area of somebody's life, right? At one point or another. But it can be through different doors. So let's say you discover a truth in business that you needed to see. Like that truth is at play everywhere in your life, right? On some level. So it's going to shift some energy in relationship. It's going to probably shift some energy in how you're showing up in the world, right? Everything touches everything else, right?
mm,
But there's usually like a doorway in, right? So somebody wants to talk about a relationship, or they want to talk about business, or they want to talk about their physical health, right? There's usually some pain point that
mm.
we're having that's kind of our introduction. It's like, welcome to deeper truth. Come on in. Right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I really appreciate that. And yeah, I really value just the eloquence with which you highlighted the distinction. There is universal truth and there's personal truth, and there is the opportunity for your personal truth to continuously evolve. And I think that is one of the challenges we have with truth. Just reflecting from my own lens, is that I think we expect truth to be absolute and universal at all times, and one of my favorite metaphors for truth has actually been this awareness of how do I describe this? I was watching this movie called Origins, and they send down. It's a bit of a long metaphor, but they basically there's this extraterrestrial force. They've sent down these 9 sections of some sort of interstellar tablet-looking thing, and it looks like a spaceship, and they've kind of dropped them in 9 different cities: Russia, China, America, Australia, all these major spots around the world. And as they basically drop these spots, and everybody starts to like have a look at what this like how they can militarize or whatever this bit of extraterrestrial information thing is. And there happens to be a linguistic person that comes and starts investigating, and long story short, she realizes that they're actually all parts of one confined tablet, right? So the one kind of, they have one contained message. And it was really powerful for me because it was quite a sci-fi kind of movie, but I took away the metaphor from truth there, because basically in their infinite awareness, or their extraterrestrial awareness, basically, the story goes that they put them in different parts of the world so that we could collaborate to come together to the absolute truth, so we could unlock this new technology that was going to guide us forward, so that there was this collective awareness together, but we needed to be unified in order to do that. And that was a really big one for me, because I realized that actually that is my responsibility, is to basically scrub my tablet and make sure that my part of the tablet is as shiny and as healed as possible and as truthful as possible, so that when it clicks into Shanna's truth, when it clicks into my wife's truth, when it clicks into everybody's truth, it's done its part, and everybody can actually read clearly, okay, this is the whole truth. Do you know what I mean? But I think that there's like this little slippery bit in personal truth, where knowing that it's not going to be absolute truth all the time, that we then make space for, and I'm not saying we're intentionally going out of our way to be dishonest, but there's so many of these, like we said before, the rewards for being false that perpetuate, the way we live our lives. Sometimes that can perhaps be the back door in which it creeps in. It's like, sometimes I find people saying, oh, I know I deserve to be free and live the life I love, but that's not really realistic. And it's like, well, what part of it is not realistic? Do you know what I mean? Is it your expectations and your beliefs are, what is your truth in and around all of this? Is it the not realistic part, or is it the first part, which is, I deserve to live a life that I love? So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. In regards to your piece of like upholding your piece, right, of the whole truth. It's interesting. When I look at somebody's energetic field, right, and I see the disharmony within, there's a lot of kind of chaos going on, right, in this year outside of us. And there's a lot of, you could say that. There's a lot of, a lot of us just feeling like there needs to be peace. There needs to be, you know what I mean? How do we heal? How do we move forward? And there's a lot of also focus, even just in the forms of protests and standing up for rights and things going on. And there's a lot of stuff in our environment. And one of the things I'm consistently shown about this is that we demand certain things outside of us, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that we are also a collective vibration together of what is inside of us. Meaning when somebody has disharmony in their system, and that disharmony reverberates out as your energetic field does, and let's say 1 million people have disharmony in their system and reverberate out that energy, that is the collective energy that's being shared, right? And so really, all the things that we want to see outside of us, we really have to ask ourselves, are we willing to show up to peace inside of us? Are we willing to create harmony within, right? So that the vibration is really harmony within, harmony in our environment.
I love that. Shanna, wow. Thank you so much for that profound insight. Wow. Thank you so much for going there. The conversation around truth, the conversation around alignment and balance. Man, so deep, so fast. I can't even believe it. I'm really grateful. For those that want to tune into your work, what's the best way to do that for them?
They can go to thesoul, SOUL, frequency.com.
Perfect. And we'll link that all in the show notes. Shanna, I really want to thank you for your time, your energy, your presence here today. But I also want to thank you for, I know it's a life's work, and you dovetailed into a little bits and pieces of, how much has gone into informing the work and the deep conversation we've had here today. So thank you so much for your time and energy and your presence.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment. And if you want to stay in tune for new episodes launching every Monday, hit subscribe and I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired to evolve.